Ms. Grantham, will you call the next? I think we were going to try for the one who didn't answer right before the break.
Correct. We are going to try to call on Paula Nolte one more time.
Okay, go ahead to the next person.
The next person is Karen Brunn.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Karen Brunn, Karen, B as in Baker, RUN is in Nancy. I am opposed to this project. The quantity and height of the proposed turbines and the proximity to a large metropolitan area, plus smaller communities, is unprecedented in Washington state, if not the entire country. At 2 miles, 52.6% more Benton County residents will be impacted 24/7 by this than the other 9 Washington counties combined where wind projects exist. At 4 miles, 110% more will be impacted. This is extremely disproportionate to the rest of the state. Tri-Cities residents, including 40% who are people of color, are being asked to sacrifice our landscape, wildlife, habitat, and our way of life for the benefit of those on the west side and beyond. This is social and environmental injustice in the extreme. Governor Inslee publicly stated at the recent climate change conference in Egypt that he thinks NIMBYism has no place in Washington state. If that is his philosophy, then why are 11 of the 13 EFSEC projects completed or in the pipeline located east of the Cascades? And how many applications did EFSEC reject because they were to be located on the west side? If Governor Inslee insists that citizens in Eastern Washington accept the ecological disruption and sacrifice of our lifestyles to forests of industrial wind turbines and seas of solar panels, he needs to have more justification than 100% clean energy bragging rights. He needs to follow the science. The Western Resource Adequacy Program has proven that wind power in Washington has an effective capacity of 8 to 11% when it's needed most. What off-taker is going to sign a contract for so little? This project is going to cost much more environmentally, socially, and economically than it will ever return. One just has to follow the money to see who truly benefits.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jeff Banning. Do we have a Jeff Banning on the line?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good. Hey, my name is Jeff Banning. As a resident of Kennewick for over 20 years, I'm completely against constructing a wind farm so close to our growing community. Excuse me, there's no reason that this wind farm needs to be sited at the southern border of the Tri-Cities. Eastern Washington has plenty of unpopulated open space available for these kinds of low density, inefficient energy producers. Appendix Q, visual simulations, figure 8.1 A and B, is what I would see every day as I drive to work, get groceries, walk the dog, mow my yard, or look out of my living room windows. Instead of the greens of the wheat fields in spring slowly fading to different hues of yellow and brown over the summer, my view would be dominated by over 20 spinning, blinking monstrosities. Part of the Tri-Cities allure is the open panoramic views of our vast shrub steppe ecosystem. 244 wind turbines would make a mockery of that. If I bought a house within view of a wind farm, then that would be a choice I made knowing full well going into the purchase. Placing the Horse Heaven Fills wind farm at its proposed location is an insult to the many South Richland Kennewick homeowners who chose this area specifically for the views of Badger Canyon and the feeling of openness as you look out of your house. I would much rather have a single small modular reactor nuclear plant built in the same general location than hundreds of inefficient wind turbines and solar panels. An SMR may not have as large a nameplate generation value, but we all know that wind and solar never generate their nameplate values. And a small modular reactor would give you consistent electrical output versus the variable nature of wind and solar. In the winter, we can sometimes go weeks with the low cloud base and no wind. There would be zero output. from the Horseheaven Hills wind and solar generators during those weeks. In closing, if the state of Washington feels the need to install renewable energy devices to meet carbon emission reduction goals, they need to do it far away from the major population centers of Eastern Washington. Thank you.
I agree.
Please make sure you are muted if you're not called. The next person is Jim Conca.
What's good?
Do we have a Jim Conca on the line? I will go on to the next person. Kevin Self.
Yes, Kevin, Kevinself. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, here I go.
The poorly prepared draft EIS. The draft EIS lacks critical information that is required by law to inform all affected stakeholders. This incomplete draft does not allow the proper review, which places the opportunity to comment at a disadvantage. The draft EIS states the applicant would develop a final restoration plan. By not providing this plan, the stakeholder cannot comment on how it's going to be implemented. When referring to a requirement or a plan, the draft uses the non-committal word would rather than will. It uses it 5,200 times throughout the document. My personal objections to this project. We built our home in Badger Canyon 12 years ago. We moved here because of the openness and country feel with endless views of rolling hills and unmatched sunsets. We may not have the trees like the west side, but our rolling hills and wide open views are equally as beautiful and irreplaceable. My objection to this project is 100% due to the adverse visual effects. The thought of looking at these towers on our hilltops and the destruction of the natural beauty in this rural setting is unthinkable. Our views will forever be destroyed by the windmills. Scattering our ridge lines with 600-foot towers will make our views look like an industrial park, similar to the pump jacks in Bakersfield, California. This project is all about politics. EFSEC became an independent state agency on June 30th, 2022. State legislature passed a bill to authorize the change as an important step to achieve Governor Inslee's carbon neutral goals by 2045. Most of the 7.7 million Washingtonians aren't aware of how and why it was changed. This new law was requested by the Office of the Governor to modernize EFSEC, giving them the authority to preempt all aspects of certification and regulations of energy facilities. Our locally elected officials representing our city and county offices have no authority under this law. We, the people, have been stripped of our right to be represented. Now EFSEC has the power to come into any county in our state and overrule local government. This is a result of a governor who has an aggressive green agenda that can only be achieved with radical measures. Bottom line, Central and Eastern Washington are paying the price by forcing these projects into our backyard. The poorly prepared draft.
The next person I have on the list is Marilyn Dickinson.
Thank you. I'm Marilyn Dickinson, MarilynDickkenson. I am not in favor of this massive intrusive wind turbine project. Build nuclear plants. They are clean and provide consistent, stable energy. Thank you.
The next person I have on the list is Pam Minnelli.
I'm Pam Minnelli, P-A-M, M as in Mary, I-N-E-L-L-I, and I'm a Kennewick resident. Many are asking, why does the applicant want to cover over 100 square miles of the scenic Horseheaven Hills with up to 244 whirling and flashing wind turbines as tall as Seattle Space Needle? Why here, when wind projects are usually placed in remote rural locations? In Chapter 1, page 5 of the DEIS, the applicant lists commercially viable above average wind speeds as one reason for selecting the Horseheaven Hills. To the contrary, a study by the Western Resource Adequacy Program, or WRAP, reports Washington-based wind power provided the lowest effective capacity of the Western US and British Columbia during December and through February. and that during the hottest months, August and September, Washington wind capacity again declined. In other words, and when it's hot, the wind doesn't blow enough here. The DEIS lists area landowners' willingness to participate in the project as another reason for selecting the Horse Heaven Hills, but fails to recognize the objection of local residents, Benton County commissioners, city councils, other elected officials, and more. Despite the science and local opposition, the applicant is committed to building this inefficient project that is too close, too big, and too tall. It's too close, with 100,000 people living within 6 miles of the Horse Heaven turbines. That's compared to about 19,000 people within 6 miles for all the other projects in the state combined. Instead of trees, 150 to 244 Space Needle sized wind turbines with red flashing lights will be visible throughout the Tri-Cities and by tourists visiting our famous wineries. So, it is so big that Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife fears it is impossible to effectively mitigate the environmental risks it poses to sensitive wildlife and some of the last remaining shrubstead habitat in the state.
Thank you. Your time is up. The next person I have is Patrick Grings.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. My name is Patrick Grings, Patrick Speaking as a 30-year resident of the Tri-Cities and owner of 40 acres of farmland here in West Richland, I'm here to make clear my statement against any construction related to the Horse Heaven Hills wind farm. First and foremost, wind turbines are not economically viable. Wind power is intermittent, as we all know. Every watt of power produced by wind must be supplemented by backup sources, including hydro, nuclear, and a mix of hydrocarbons. At a minimum, this doubles the cost of wind power. Second, wind power is neither green nor sustainable. The wind blades must be replaced every 20 to 25 years as a result of stress fracture degradation. Most of the turbines in the Columbia Gorge were installed during a period of 2005 through 2015, and many of these will need to be replaced starting in 2030. Recycling is not an economically viable option. Wind power is simply not sustainable. Instead of desecrating our beautiful landscape in eastern Washington, we should focus our efforts on preserving the fully green and clean hydropower that's in operation, as well as advance the build-out of safe nuclear reactors. I submitted additional comments via email to the EFSEC. In summary, I'm opposed to the Horse Heaven Hills wind project. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Rylan Grimes.
Hello?
Is there a Rylan Grimes on the line?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, perfect. Okay. My name is Rylan Grimes, RYLANGRIMES. I'm a lifelong resident of the Tri-Cities, and I'm a representative of IBW Local 112, and we represent 1,300 electricians in southeastern Washington that would greatly benefit from the jobs that will be created by this project. My brothers and sisters of IBW Local 112 have been at the forefront of green energy production, including a recent repower at the Van Sickle Wind Project in Athena, Oregon, successfully extending the life of the towers down there. My brothers and sisters built the first wind and solar project in America that could put power on the grid 24/7 through battery storage in Lexington, Oregon last year. Low-cost power is the key to attracting new industries to the area, and we need to supply the supply in whatever form it takes. My brothers and sisters depend on a steady stream of construction jobs, and denying this project will not only deny them these jobs, but future jobs as well as industry turns away from the area. I understand the desire to build this project far from view, but I would ask those opposed how long their commute to work is. Many of my brothers and sisters drive an hour and a half one way to work every day. This would be a welcome change of pace for many of them. IBW Local 112 and I support this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next person is Daryl Osborne.
Yes, Daryl Osborne, D-A-R-R-E-L-L. Last name Osborne, O-S-B-O-R-N. Okay, so what I would start with is at the beginning of this call, we took a roll call. What I noticed was absent was anybody representing public health. And I call that to attention, both the audible and inaudible effects on nearby locales and the well-documented cases in other areas in which they are finding neurological conditions and other things that have been continued to be researched and trying to attribute exactly where these seemingly new conditions are rising from, which just happen to be nearby wind farms. This has happened in the mainland all over the US and as far out as Hawaii in the North Shore. Secondly, we talk about some of the goals of the county and our public lands kind of designation. Goal number 3 is conserve visually prominent, naturally vegetated steep slopes and elevated ridges that define Columbia Basin landscape and are uniquely a product of the Ice Age. That's a goal. I don't believe that this project maintains that goal of preserving the landscape. Another note in the document is that this is 4 miles south of Kennewick. I'm not sure exactly the point they used in Kennewick, but as Kennewick continues to expand, as someone already previously noted, this is upwards of 3/4 of a mile from residents. And as we continue to expand out the Badger Canyon area and housing developments continue to grow. I'm all for clean energy, just not at the expense of the residents and the way of life. I commute a long ways. I don't think a shorter commute is good reason for a couple of electricians to damage our environment and our infrastructure. Thank you for having me.
The next person on the list is Jason Lohr.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
JASONLOHR. Thank you all for having me. I think what I'd most like to talk about is I am an electrician. I've lived here most of my life. And it's depressing to hear so many of my fellow citizens belittle and diminish my profession and those of 9% of our citizens here locally. We account for about 9% of workers and a heck of a lot more than that of the economy. Construction is a great deal of our economy out here. I hear a lot about these jobs are temporary. Construction is temporary. I build things and then they're built. And then I go build something else. My job is important. All of our jobs are important. I do not think it is a genuine, viable argument that jobs aren't important because they won't last for 10 years. It is a huge portion of our economy and is the way myself and an awful lot of people feed our families. So I really don't like hearing who cares about a couple of electricians, particularly from elected officials. Now, with the rest of my time, I guess I'd like to bring up a couple of weird things I've heard. I recommend you Google wind turbine syndrome because all the results are basically it doesn't exist. Do solar panels vaporize birds mid-flight? No, that's absurd. I have worked in wind and solar projects. I find it interesting that there's a bunch of people that looked up some things that would confirm their biases on the internet, and we haven't heard from anybody who's an expert in any of these fields. I have worked in these places. I haven't seen any dead birds. I haven't seen any huge environmental impact. I've seen crops growing right underneath these things. And I personally think it's unacceptable for a couple of homeowners to move to the edge of the city and point out their kitchen window and say, that's it, no one ever gets to build anything there because I bought a house over here. Thank you.
The next person I have on the list is Valerie Miller. Do we have a Valerie Miller on the line?
Can you hear me
Oh.
okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. This is Valerie Miller. My name is Valerie Miller. I just want to first say I am just so amazed at the effort that our community members have put into really researching and studying what is going to go into this windmill project. I mean, it takes a lot of time and resources to do that. I know I've been doing my best, and I'm a busy mom of 4, and I'm very concerned because these are going to go up in our backyard, and I've never heard of such a big wind farm ever. So this is very new to everyone. And the gentleman that just spoke, no one is downplaying jobs or electricians or diminishing what they do, but the concern for the rest of the citizens is how sustainable these are, how reliable they are. I mean, everything I have read, there's no one's been able to recycle these materials. So I don't understand how they're considered green for energy. I mean, it doesn't seem like anything about them is green. I mean, I'm concerned that if we look far enough down the road, these things are going to become, landfills and skeletons in our community, and eventually could create basically a ghost town with all the effects that it creates. I mean, nobody really knows, right? And, I understand that I don't have the skills or knowledge about all that goes on with our environment, but from what I read in the EFSEC study, it sounded like the study didn't come up with a good reason why the wind farm shouldn't be in either. And that's a concern to me, because that's what the government's going to be reading, right? And so I really hope EFSEC will help us to help them understand these concerns that we all have, and that we want to create something that's going to be sustainable for all of us for the future. Looking far enough down the road.
Your time is up. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next person I have on the list is Josh Miller. Do we have a Josh Miller on the line?
Yeah. Yes. Hello?
We can hear you.
So, my biggest concern on this project is again, it seems like it's a project that, while it may provide some initial short-term benefits, the long-term repercussions of the project could be disastrous. You look at some of the projects in other areas of the country, such as in California and on the East Coast, many of these states no longer allow these big projects to even occur because they've seen the detrimental long-term impacts. I mean, you look in Southern California, these huge farms that are now wind farms that are now in a large part non-functional because the long-term implications of what they were doing were never completely thought through. If you were to do any type of a project like this, there needs to be a guarantee, basically a responsibility of the company, where they have to dismantle these if they don't work or if they're not in use for a certain period of time. And that money needs to already be collected. So it's not something they could pay in the future. It's guaranteed that they will take care of their own waste. Again, has been mentioned before, the wind blades are highly toxic, can only be placed in a couple of different landfills in the country. This is not something that is easily taken care of. These windmills have a very limited lifespan. They don't last forever. They last for usually a little more than a decade or two at best, based on a lot of the research. And again, you're going to create large areas that have significant environmental impact. And that doesn't even go into some of the impact on the animal species in this area, the migratory patterns and things along those lines. So I'm strongly opposed to this project, as I see the detrimental impact it has on the community, particularly in the long term, is enormous, and particularly on our environment. This is an environmental disaster once these things are no longer functional, trying to figure out what to do with these toxic blades, these big eyesores, and basically trying to figure out how to manage them. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate everybody's effort.
Thank you. The next person I have is Kathy Dechter.
She is not available this evening.
Okay. Oh, Sam Dechter, you are the next person on the list, so you can
That
go
is
next.
that is me.
Perfect. Go ahead.
SAMDECHTER. I am opposed to the Horse 7 wind farm project. The Horse 7 wind farm project proposes construction operation of a combined wind and solar power renewable energy facility only 4 miles south of Kennewick and stretching for 20 miles along the Horse 7 Hills. The product of this project, electricity, will not be used in the local area and will in fact most likely be shipped out of Washington. Once construction is complete, the high-paying jobs will cease. However, the several hundred huge wind turbines, up to 500 feet or more tall, will be around for many years, negatively impacting the citizens living nearby and the area's wildlife. Final approval for the Horse 7 wind farm project should rest with Benton County and other local government agencies. This would more appropriately reflect the desires, concerns, values, and priorities of the local community. Similarly, determination of satisfactory operational performance to meet permitted conditions and operational parameters should be in the hands of local agencies and not in the hands of the facility owner-operator. Second, if the project is allowed to proceed, it should be moved away from the crest of the Horse 7 Hills and relocated southward several miles toward the Columbia River, where it will not be visible from the Tri-Cities and will not present an eyesore to our citizens and visitors. Remember H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds when the Martians invaded. I am concerned for the wildlife that will be displaced by construction and operation of this project. I am concerned also for the birds that will be endangered and destroyed by the operating wind turbine blades and will have their historic flight patterns disrupted and breeding grounds destroyed. If we can fight to protect our salmon, we should fight equally as hard to protect our birds and other wildlife. Our highly desirable scenic views, important to local businesses and attractive to out-of-town visitors, will be lost. This will negatively impact the local and regional economy through the loss of business, loss of visitors, and loss of revenue.
Okay, thank you. Your time is up.
Thank you.
The next person I have on the list is Ross Martirano. I believe he is in person at Benton County. Oh, there we go.
My name is Ross, R-O-S-S, Martirano, M-A-R-T-U-R-A-N-O. It's difficult not to incorporate all of the thoughts already mentioned, so I just want to add some additional thoughts. I worked in Manhattan for 35 years. Manhattan is 17 miles long. This project is 25 miles long. 70 of the structures are taller than the skyscrapers in Manhattan. So we are essentially creating a Manhattan along the southern part of Kennewick County or Benton County. Additionally, none of the power is required within this area. We are 100% renewable in Benton County. We do not use coal. We're 74% hydroelectric, no natural gas, 9 to 10% nuclear. No petroleum is used in generation of the power. So we're essentially a green community now. So why would this project be put in this location when it's not necessary locally? There's no insurance that the power will be used locally. And there's strictly only a profit incentive in doing this project. So I'm strongly against this project for aesthetic reasons and for common sense. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next person I have is Diane McDaniel.
Yes. Diane McDaniel, D-I-A-N-E. Last name is McDaniel, M-C-D-A-N-I-E-L. My family moved to the Tri-Cities in 1973 when my father was transferred here to work on the Ice Harbor Dam. He was career Army Corps of Engineers who would work on dams throughout the West, up and down the Columbia and Snake Rivers. When Dad transferred to his next assignment, my brothers and sisters and I would stay here. We would put down roots, marry, and have kids and grandkids here in the Tri-Cities. The growth of the Tri-Cities I've witnessed since 1973 is beyond incredible. And the past years have been even bigger, although not always the best jobs for working people. That's why we need to support new energy that can power those good-paying manufacturing jobs. Most can't afford the home on the hilltop. What I ask of EFSEC is to include in their review how the Horse Heaven Clean Energy Center's electricity would contribute clean power to our local region needs. Many folks like to complain, and we've heard a little bit on this call tonight about California and others, and BPA selling our power, turning each other against outsiders, and well, let's just set that aside for now. The truth is, we need more of everything. And you know, my family was we were dams, from the Libby Dam to Ice Harbor to John Day, up and down, and we all worked at Hanford, but we need more, and we need to attract new manufacturing to the Tri-Cities area, and I think this project will help do that. Thank you for your consideration of my comments.
Thank you. Up next, I have Greg Gales.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, my name is Greg Gales, G-R-E-G-G-A-L-E-S, and I speak in favor of this project. Like it was said by the electrician earlier, Ryan Grimes, that, you know, it would provide income for the local community. It would also, this project would also contribute an estimated $260 million in new tax revenue for our community. So I guess I don't understand the other comments that why they wouldn't be support of that to be able to grow Tri-Cities. So that's what I'd like to say, is I do support the project. Thank you.
Up next, I have Graham Zimmerman.
Hi, this is Graham. Graham Zimmerman, Grahamzimmerman. I am a professional mountain climber and the Alliance Manager at Protect Our Winters. I've made first ascents from Alaska to the Karakoram, feats that have resulted in awards, including the gold medal of alpine climbing, called the PLA d'Or, and a role as the board president of the American Alpine Club. I also work full-time at Protect Our Winters to engage our over 200 athletes, creatives, scientists, and business leaders to mobilize the 50 million enthusiasts in the United States, which POW calls the outdoor state, to advance nonpartisan climate solutions that protect all communities and the places that we love to recreate. I'm zooming in today from Bend, Oregon, where I am based, but I grew up in Edmonds, Washington, and the beautiful Cascades are where I fell in love with climbing. These days, I am in Washington frequently to see my family and visit those incredible mountains. I am here on behalf of Protect Our Winters, my family and community in Washington, to provide support for the Horse Heaven Clean Energy Center. Having studied glaciers in university and spent the majority of my life exploring mountain environments, I have witnessed the impacts of climate change firsthand in the mountains worldwide, very much including Washington. These impacts have crept into the lower elevations in the form of wildfires, strong storm systems, and heat waves. All of these have expanded the climate issue to encompass massive impacts on community health. As you will see in our written public comment, without utility scale projects like this, dramatically decreasing snowpack and extended wildfire seasons will continue to threaten Washington's $6.3 billion outdoor recreation economy and the health of all Washingtonians. In conclusion, I urge you on behalf of the members of the Outdoor State and all Washingtonians who value clean air, community health, and economic prosperity to move the Horse Heaven project to its construction phase and issue all pending approvals on the project. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Brent Strecker.
Yes, Brent Strecker, BRENT STRECKER. Benton County has been my home for over 50 years, and my family live within 1 mile of the proposed turbines. I enjoy outdoors and have hiked and biked the Horse Heaven Hills my entire life. I see firsthand the wildlife that will be affected by the turbines. There is an owl couple that hoos from our rooftops during the night, and I see hawks almost every time out riding or biking. I generally see flocks of seagulls or sandhill cranes and geese fly over year-round. One time this last December, the sky was filled with flocks of birds for as far as I could see in all directions. Some of the flocks had 500 to 1,000 birds in them, all headed through the proposed turbine area. Industrial wind turbines are not a novelty or a celebration of symbol of the environmental virtue. Many of the Eastern Washingtons who live within them as an intruding presence along every path we travel in and out of our community, and as a backdrop to our favorite fishing, hunting, hiking, and sightseeing destinations. The idea that my wife and I have to live within this intruding presence of forest of industrial wind turbines in our backyard every time we step outside, day or night, is dispiriting and frankly downright depressing, particularly when you consider that Washington State is already one of the top renewable energy producers in the nation, and that unreliable wind farms will do little to nothing to solve the real problem of increasing blackout risk within or facing Washington State citizens. There are many reasons the turbine towers over the Tri-Cities are just wrong. For instance, my estimate, this project would reuse around 20,000 gallons of oil annually. But the one reason that should be most considered is the Western Regency Protection Research, because it directly addresses how the turbines in our area will operate.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Your time is up. You can send the rest in writing.
Up next, we have Jerry Strickler. Do we have a Jerry Strickler on the line? I will call the next person, Rick Dunn.
Yeah, good evening, Rick Dunn, RICK-DUNN. I'm the general manager of Benton PUD and a longtime citizen of Benton County. It's common sense to recognize the intermittency and variability of wind power is a significant deficiency when the power grid is expected to deliver continuous and uninterrupted electricity no matter what the weather. The question is, can you assign a number to this deficiency? And the answer is yes, and utilities in the Northwest have done it. In response to increasing risk of Northwest power grid blackouts driven by rapid coal plant retirements and no plans for reliable replacements, Benton PUD joined a consortium of utilities in an effort called the Western Resource Adequacy Program, also known as WRAP. One major objective of the WRAP was to adopt common grid reliability planning and analysis standards, including calculating what percentage of installed wind farm generating capacity located in certain geographic areas can be counted on when electricity demand is highest. What the WRAP team determined is Washington wind farms are expected to provide the lowest effective winter capacity than any region analyzed by a factor of more than 2 to 3, depending on the month. In the worst case, utilities who add Washington wind to their portfolio will only be allowed to use 8% of the maximum generating capacity possible as credit toward their January dependable supply inventory. The 850 megawatt Horse Heaven Hills wind farm lease boundary area is over 72,000 acres, but the project would only be credited by the RAP for 68 megawatts of January effective capacity. It would take more than 7 projects the size of the Horse Heaven project to provide effective capacity of a single clean burning and dependable natural gas power plant occupying 15 to 20 acres. Utility engineers like myself have been backed into a corner by politicians who are now designing the power grid to their liking. There's no doubt wind farms are going to be built, but if you still think the numbers should matter, Washington wind farms should be low on the list of alternatives, or in the case of the Horse Heaven wind farm, removed from the list. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Jackie Fuller or Jack Fuller. Do I have a Jackie Fuller on the line? I will go on to the next person, Mike Bossy.
Thank you. Mike Bosse, M-I-K-E-B-O-S-S-E. Developing the project's hybrid combination of wind, solar, and battery storage applications will create as many as 930 jobs for skilled construction workers. Through building local access roads and foundations to support the technology, the project will employ crane operators, electricians, and skilled laborers. The project will be a significant source of employment in the local area. The jobs required by this project are high-paying family wage opportunities. Economic impact studies examining the project's estimated the typical income per worker during the construction phase will be $113,500. That's nearly 60% higher than the average regional compensation across industries and 37% higher than the compensation in the construction industry for Benton and Franklin counties. The studies also show that at full build out, the project could amount to at least $73 million in labor income and $143 million in total economic output. Following construction, the project will also create a combined direct, indirect, and induced total of 56 long-term high-paying jobs during the estimated 30-year lifespan. I'd like to also add that I'm happy to hear there's so much support on this forum for nuclear power, as that will probably be coming up in the near future as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, I have Mark Morton. Is Mark Morton on the line? I recall seeing him in the chat. I will call one more time for Mark Morton. Okay, I will call the next person. I have a Manuel Soibert.
Oh yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
this is
we can.
Manuel Soibert, M-A-N-U-E-L-S-E-U-B-E-R-T. I already submitted comments in writing, so I'll keep it short. I agree with a lot of the comments against the wind farm here, blinking lights and waste of space when nuclear power is a lot more efficient. But I'm also a local paragliding pilot who flies on that ridge basically on every opportunity that I get. The wind is very variable. Sometimes it's way too strong. Sometimes there's absolutely no wind, which affects wind power generation probably as well. But I'm also concerned about the effect of the turbines on paragliding pilots. Not the risk of getting hit per se, but how much turbulence is after the turbines, how much does the wind turbines affect the downwind of the buildings. That was not addressed in any of the comments in the environmental statement, at least I haven't seen it. they mentioned a lot of paragliding spots, but none of those spots are used except for Cayona, which is right the same ridge where the wind turbines are planned to be built. So just something to keep in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Cisco Elguezabal. Apologies.
Nope, you got it pretty close. Yeah, Cisco, CISCO, last name ELGUEZABAL. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm the business manager of Labor's Local 348. I represent over 1,200 hard-working men and women in Eastern and Central Washington. Horse 7 Clean Energy Project will result in approximately 1,000 local union construction jobs, 56 long-term family permanent jobs. Scout Clean has also committed the use of apprenticeship utilization for 15% of labor hours. We already have trained, qualified men and women to do the renewable projects, so we are in full support of this project. Thank you.
Next, I have Russell Walker.
Good evening. Russell Walker, RUSSELLWALKER. I commend this council on the thorough analysis of visual impacts included in the DEIS for the Horsehead Clean Energy Center. This approach is based in a factual and sound methodology, a forthright accounting of how the project's visual impacts will vary widely at different distances and between key observation points. A clear mitigation measures to avoid and minimize the most significant potential visual obstructions. This impartial, science-based approach is needed, particularly considering many of the emotional and inaccurate appeals that have been made about the project. It is true that individuals may have a difference in opinion about what our region's landscape ought to look like. It's also true that wind turbines are prominent features which will be seen by many and may elicit subjective reactions. But by relocating the project's proposed turbines in the foreground areas of non-participating residents and other sensitive viewing locations, the council is ensuring the most significant visual impacts will be mitigated. It is also important to clarify that the proposed project layout keeps much of the turbines out of sight from key population centers. This has been demonstrated through several visual simulations, which demonstrate where the turbines would be in relation to specific viewpoints. With the current mitigation strategies identified by the DEIS meeting best practices for minimizing viewshed impacts, any reactions raised from the project's visual impact should be considered subjective. They will also vary widely based on distance and viewpoint. These differences in opinion certainly shouldn't raise the standard of further regulatory intervention. I highly encourage this council to carefully balance these dynamics against the significant contributions to the Horsehead Clean Energy Center, which will make for achieving our state's climate agenda, curbing the impacts of climate change, and achieving the region's clean energy goals. Thank you.
Next, I have Catherine Tomini. Do we have a Catherine Tomini on the line?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Okay. Catherine Tomini, Kathryn, Tomini, Tominey. I'm supporting the program. The combination of wind turbines, solar, and high-capacity storage batteries is a great combination. It's not the only solution, but it will certainly help the area. I came here from college in February of 1968, 55 years ago. So I've lived here 55 years. And yes, there are lots of things that look different now than they did then. Drive from Bend to the Columbia River, drive from Menashtash Ridge to Cle Elum, drive to Walla Walla, and you'll see wind turbines. World did not come to an end. I hope the EIS will put some information into regarding the existing implemented recycling technology for wind turbine blades. It's not a maybe, it's being done as we speak. I also hope the EIS will address or cover the potential of the solar panels to support farmers who want to implement agrivoltaics. And many of the speakers may not have focused on this, but the owners of the land, farmers, will also benefit from the steady stream of revenue from electricity to stabilize their farm incomes and make it easier for them to stay on the farm. I grew up on a farm, so I know something. That's all I have to say. I think it's a good idea and hope it proceeds. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Barbara Buckmaster.
Hello.
Hello, is this Barbara?
Yes, it is.
Go ahead,
Thank
we
you
can
for
hear
your
you.
time. Barbara Buckmaster, B-A-R-B-A-R-A, Buckmaster, B-U-C-K-M-A-S-T-E-R. Please do not allow Scout Clean Energy to ruin our most beautiful horse heaven landscaping by constructing wind turbines. I own 200 acres, a 200-acre farm that borders the base of the hills where the turbines are proposed to be erected. I really do worry that this will lower the value of my property for years to come. I'm concerned about the flashing lights that will be nothing but a nuisance at night, and they are monstrous eyesores. And I truly believe they will affect our habitat. And so goes the list of our complaints. I was approached by Scout Clean Energy when they first came to our community, hunting for a pathway to transport their power to the power grid. And truly, at first, I seemed like it was a great idea, since this country is working to clean up our environment. Once I really started to look into this, and after legal advice and advice from community developers, I felt it was best that I ran, and I ran fast. I do not feel Scout Clean Energy has this community in heart. What they have at heart is the opportunity to line their pockets and the pockets of their investors. They came to our area scouting for a sweet place to install their turbines, and what that we really don't need at this time. We have abundance of power. We have nuclear power and we have hydropower already in this area. And when the time arrives when this community needs support from our community, will support anyone when it's time that we really need the extra power. But why? Why do we need to agree to this when we really do not need this windmill in our area at this time? Oh, sure. Yes, everybody, I've heard you. We will have extra jobs.
Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you.
Next, I have Catherine Knudsen.
Here.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Thanks for holding this hearing. Catherine Knudsen, Kathryn Knutson. From the research I've done, I think that the Horseheaven Hills Wind Farm will have negative consequences for the endangered Washington State Ferruginous hawk and the sensitive areas the hawk needs to be able to hunt and nest in. And as I've stated before in my previous comments submitted to you, the Horseheaven Wind Farm has no meaningful compensation proposals, nor any real mitigation efforts for the negative effects suffered from the proposed wind farm for the hawk. So please do not approve this industrial-sized wind farm. The endangered Washington State Ferruginous hawk should not be sacrificed to meet the green energy goals set forth by Washington State. In addition, the U.S. Wildlife Service estimates that between 140,000 and 500,000 bird deaths occur at wind farms each year, And the most significant threat is posed to species of the large, threatened, and high conservation value birds, such as the Washington state ferruginous hawk. In addition, my farm is within a couple of miles, probably less, of this massive wind farm. And my farm is in a conservation reserve program for the ferruginous hawk. So that's why I have concerns about of this massive project and how it's going to affect what I'm doing. Thank you.
Thank you. We will take a break now for 5 minutes and come back at 7:04.